Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of My Veterinary Life podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Marcy Kirk. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm joined by our other co-host, Dr. Annie Chavant.
Hi, everyone. My pronouns are also she, her, hers.
We are excited to kick off a 3-part mini-series today, joined by 2 very special guests. And we are going to be focusing on a couple of new launches for a program at the AVMA. Hopefully, some of you are familiar with Journey for Teams, and we're going to be talking about the latest iteration that's actually launching this month. And we couldn't be more excited to bring the experts on to talk about it with us. So we're going to be joined by Chief Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Officer, Dr. Latonia Craig, and Director of Veterinary Wellbeing and Diversity Initiatives, Dr. Jen Brandt. Before we welcome them in, we do want to remind everyone that this episode is brought to you with support from our educational partner, IDEX, whose diagnostic and software solutions create clarity in the complex, constantly evolving world of veterinary medicine, and you can learn more at idex.com. So with that, welcome to the show, Dr. Craig and Dr. Brandt.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
We are so excited to have you both join us again. We have a lot to cover, so we're going to just dive right in. So this is, like I said in the intro, a 3-part series. And what we thought we might start with is, Dr. Craig, if you could give us just a brief overview of Journey for Teams, what that is, so people kind of know what we're talking about as we look at the next phase.
Sure. So Journey for Teams is AVMA's DEI flagship program, which introduces individuals and veterinary teams to DEI concepts, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have a total of 16 modules that are available for your use for free on our jft.org website. I think the thing that makes our educational platform distinct is beyond introducing the concepts. We do provide some tangible ways that folks can apply those tools to their work, whether it be individually or being on a veterinary team. There are 3 components to the DEI concepts. Not only are we introducing you to the topic, we're delivering that topic through a 5 to 7 minute video. And so if you are more of someone who just likes the visual of looking at a video, that's for you. Or if you would like to read, there is a topic essay that also gives more information about the concept. And then I think the most important tool of the 3 tools are the 3-2-1 worksheet. The 3-2-1 worksheet, there are things that it introduces you to. There's 3 highlights of the concept that we want you to remember. There's 2 questions that we want you to reflect on. And then there's 1 behavioral change that you can commit to. And we offer a menu of things to get you started. We are not necessarily saying that you have to subscribe to those things that we are providing to you, but it gets you started around what are some things that I can do after this is over that I can continue working on so that you can see the change that you want to see. And so that's our Journey for Teams platform. We have over 18,000 users of our platform, and that number continues to grow. I think there are folks that are finding pieces of it that can apply to them. I think the biggest thing that I certainly want to mention here as we're talking about DEI, I think a lot of the trepidation around DEI has been, God, it's such a big concept. It's so huge. How can I narrow this down? I keep hearing people telling me about these concepts, but I don't know what it means. What should I do with it? And so JFT really gets you there. And so I think folks are really becoming more aware about things that they could work on that they didn't know before. And some that may have been adverse to DEI in general are now finding, hey, it's not really what I thought. So I'm putting myself in a position to grow and learn. And I think there's a lot of good stuff that's coming out of it. Why is DEI important to veterinary medicine? I think the human experience, the human condition is a part of everything that we do, and veterinary medicine is not exempt. And so because of that, I think we have to create opportunities where we learn more about how to connect with each other. How do we connect with colleagues? How do we connect with clients? How do we connect to the folks that we report to or to folks that report to us? And in order for us to do that, DEI is a tool that creates that pathway.
Yeah, it's a really helpful introduction and framework to the program. And I always love learning about the why behind we're doing what we're doing and how we're doing what we're doing too, because it does sound like Journey for Teams is a very intentional format. And the goal is very intentional too. It's like, we're not just going to learn about these concepts, we're going to do something about them. And we're going to kind of push that comfort zone of some suggested action items, but also taking some ownership of those action items too. And that's something that I've really enjoyed with the program too. Now, you said we've got the 16 modules, so that's a lot of modules. That seems good in and of itself. But Journey for Teams is not done there, if I'm not mistaken. So, can you talk to us a little bit about the next phase of this program?
Absolutely. So our next phase of the program. So a lot of the feedback that we received has been on folks have shared with us that I love what you all have done in this first iteration. I'm looking for more of those tangible skills, things that I can practice, work on, especially when it comes to conflict resolution. And conflict resolution, it can happen anywhere, whether it's with your partner, whether it's at work, with your colleagues, your peers, with clients. It happens all around us, but we kind of shy away from conflict, especially if you don't have the tools, because you want to make sure that you're not um, you're not elevating that conflict in a way to where it's gotten to a point where it can't reach any kind of resolve. And so there are folks that are looking for those tools, those things that they could use to refine that skill. And so because of that, we've come out with what we're calling as educational sharpenings. And the reason why we're calling them sharpenings, if you think of a knife and you are having, or if you're thinking of a pencil, when you're having to sharpen a pencil, you're getting it to make it better so you can write better, so that you can use the tool better, right? I think we are all equipped with tools that can all be refined. We all know how to communicate, but can we communicate better? Absolutely. And so a way to do that is to sharpen that skill of communication, of conflict resolution. And we're going to provide some of the pathways to sharpen those skills that we're introducing.
Oh, I love that. It's a blending of still that introduction and high level, whereas in a little bit of a deeper dive, somehow blending it perfectly together. So our goal today is to kind of give, without too much away, a highlight of the first two educational sharpenings, and they're going to come out each month. So the first one will be out, at the beginning of June when this episode, sort of launches. So, Dr. Brandt, the first one's on self-awareness. And so why self-awareness in the workplace? We focused on teams, Journey for Teams. Why is self-awareness the first topic we're, expanding on?
It's one of those skills you don't want to leave home without. So I'll first share a little bit about self-awareness. We tend to think about it as we have like internal self-awareness, right? I know what my feelings and my motives and my behaviors are, and I know when those are out of alignment, and that is part of it. The other part is, am I aware of how it lands, right? So not just the internal motivation, but how it's impacting others. And the reason that is important is that in the workplace specifically, it's associated with so many benefits. So we have a capacity to make better decisions when we have the full self-awareness, right? So I'm not just in tune to what I'm thinking, but I'm aware of how the ripple effect that this is going to have on a team or our clients. It's associated with greater levels of happiness. Better personal and professional relationships, which makes sense, again, because I'm not making decisions in a vacuum. It's associated with greater creativity and more confidence. It makes sense that's associated with better communication, and it's also associated with higher performance at work.
Those sound like a lot of good things. And I think that is, that's perfect for the sharpening, right? Like, you've got these skills. We probably all have a baseline level of these skills, but could they be that much better? And so giving us the tools and knowledge and resources to get to that next level. So that's amazing. So what does that next level look like? Like, what can we expect from the sharpening itself? And I'll throw it back to you, Dr. Craig.
I think the biggest piece of self-awareness is the reflection piece. There are a lot of practical tools that are embedded in the module that allows individuals to look at, do some introspection around, who am I? What are my value statements? What is at the core of who I am? How do I want to be perceived? What is it that I need to learn about myself, and what do I want folks to learn from me. How do we kind of build that communication piece? But in order for you to build bridges, you really got to do that work, your own work. You've got to do your own work, especially if you want to hear folks the right way, because a part of listening to someone, you might perceive it differently and not understand how it's landing for you if you've not done your own work. And if you've not done that work, your response to them may be a reflection of you not doing your work, right? So you want to make sure that you're being very intentional about how you communicate with someone, how you're listening, how you're showing up for both yourself and for other people. And then it also gives you some reflection around, how does the organization fit in that environment? If you're working somewhere, how do those values of that organization align with yours? And perhaps you'll find some things that you need to do some more digging on. But hopefully you'll come to some sort of epiphany around, wow, I see what I'm doing. I know what I need to do to show up in the way that I intend to show up. And then hopefully people will accept me as I am. And then we can find some sort of common ground. But the work has to be done. So a part of this work is really just providing an exercise. We talk a lot about, yes, Deuce, you need to have some self-awareness. They need to have that, but we never talk about how. And so that's what we intend to do with the sharpening.
And it's going to blend, just like you said, for Journey for Teams, the modules, the educational sharpenings are going to have different components that'll speak to different people. So there's going to be a video with pauses in it with animations and pauses. And I find the animations really help drive the points home. So I must be a visual learner in there. And then there's going to be the worksheet, and then there can be, discussion. Again, you can do this alone. You can do this as a team. It's going to create all those different elements. So it's going to be a really good blending of everything and how people learn.
Yeah, I love that you said that, Marcina, and I failed to mention that is the scenarios, I think, is a really key component of the educational sharpening, so that folks can, because, we might talk about this, as worth it being disconnected from, the content. This will allow folks to see how it happens, what it looks like, and then they can actually apply it real time by looking at the exercises that's provided in the scenario. So very good point, because I think that is a critical part of the sharpening.
And so with that, so that's self-awareness. So our next one, and I know we're not supposed to have favorites, but emotional reactivity is the next topic. And it is a personal favorite of mine. For anyone who knows me, it's probably because of the dog that I currently have, who has informed much of the content for reactivity. And I heard this, the thing that just keeps going through my mind is there's a difference between reactive and responsive. And so that's been something that's been like a theme that I've been trying to incorporate. And so, Jen, kind of tell us why, like, what is emotional reactivity? Why? Maybe give us an example of how we can use this in vet med, although I think it's applicable to a lot of places in life. So kind of walk us through the second educational sharpening.
Yeah, I like applying this one to people as well. And I take it from my experience of having a very reactive cat, right? And a lot of the lessons I've learned about my cat also apply with people. So when we think about emotional reactivity, one of the ways that I've heard it framed that I really like the most is essentially the degree to which you are bothered by something. And a lot of times that what comes to mind is if somebody is on your treadmill at the gym, right? There may be a day that you come in like that you notice that they're on your treadmill and you just keep moving, right? Your workout will be the same. And then other times it almost undoes you. Like you can't, hours later, you are angry that person messed with your day. And so we would think about that as emotional reactivity. And one of the ways that I often hear that playing out might be in response to a client saying something along the lines of, if you really cared about pets, you wouldn't charge money for your services. And you definitely can see kind of two waves of responses to that. So the professional who is not emotionally reactive in that moment can, maybe have some self-talk this is not about me. This might be an opportunity for connection. I can see that this client has some needs that I might be able to address. really like your brain is there to even have that inner dialogue with, and then that can show in your behavior, right? You respond in a compassionate way. When we are reactive, some people will describe it as that sense of just seeing red. And even when your logical brain will be like, you're going to probably regret this later, it's like you almost can't stop it. And it just, something comes out. And so it may really show as anger or rage or words or responses that your better self might not respond with, but like that's what's coming, and you're really angry and you're really targeting it, instead of being aware that it's your own personal reaction that you need to manage. And so that is a way that we might typically see it play out in the workplace. But by the way, this also plays out in our relationships with our partners and our kids and our friends, right? Like we all will navigate these times in our life or these moments where things come together that make it very hard to respond in that balanced way that we would like to do all the time.
Yeah, thanks for that specific example. That one really, I feel like brought the concept of emotional reactivity to life for me. I guess I should also say that I'm the only one in this podcast now that has not seen the Educational Sharpening. So I'm listening to this with new eyes and ears, just like our listeners will be. So I'm super excited to hear about it. Dr. Craig, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I do. And I love that example, Jen, about the treadmill. For me, I have found myself doing that when I go to church and someone's sitting in my seat in the pew. And it's the seat that I have always sat in, and I get upset and I get bothered, like, okay, I'm gonna need you to move down this seat, because this is where I normally sit. And so we have those moments throughout the day where we are bothered, whether we're triggered. There's something in us that makes us upset. And I think the value in this module is exploring why that is. And what are they? Because I think we all have those triggers, and have we really sat and reflected on what those are and how do they show up in our conversations with people? How do they show up in the workplace? How does it show up in our accepting of people or not accepting people? They show up everywhere. And so the value in this is really teaching us tools around how to self-regulate and how to ask ourselves those questions before we immediately engage, so that we can make sure that the emotion is not what's talking for us, but we can reconcile with whatever emotion it is, and then move past that to get to a more productive conversation. And I think if we think about the cumulative effects throughout the day, that where we might be triggered, and at the end of the day, who might get the result or that wrath at the end. I mean, if you start your day and if you're a coffee drinker and you walk into the break room and there's no coffee, one, you're triggered, you're upset because this is something that you need throughout the day. You walk into the hallway and then you meet someone you report to, and now they're talking to you about, they need to talk to you about your performance. And you can kind of see that it's not a good conversation about your performance, but it's negative. And then you go into a space where your colleagues are saying that they need you to pull your weight or they need you to work for longer hours than what you expected to. You're triggered again. And then you have a client who is upset about payment. You're triggered again. And so you've got this cumulative effect. And not only is it impacting your well-being, but it is impacting the way that you're going to interact with folks throughout the course of the rest of the day. And so how can you take time to figure out what those things are, why you feel the way that you do? And all of that needs some time and reflection. So this is just good practice to figure out how can we be better, knowing that all of these things are in our environment that we've got to deal with. How can we be better communicators and really act intentionally with the way that we intend to respond or act.
Yeah, thanks for kind of zooming out on that too, because we've got the pinpoint example of one instance of emotional reactivity, but then the fact that it is cumulative, and it's cumulative throughout the day and then the week and then the month and then the year. And so being able to have those tools and skills to recognize it and see if how we can de-escalate, or learning a little bit more about the why, I can only imagine how useful that's going to be. So I don't know. I don't want to have a favorite either, but I'm excited about this module. So I am curious though, because you just said it takes time to kind of honestly build the self-awareness around emotional reactivity to kind of bridge the two. So how does this educational sharpening start that process for somebody?
So I will say some of the work that's embedded in the exercise, we have statements, phrases, and we want folks to explore, what comes up for you when you see this. And there's even examples broken down between different groups of people. So if an employer said this, if a colleague said this, if a client said this, because you also have to take into account who is the person that's saying it, because you might feel a little different depending on who it's coming from. So for instance, if we were involved in a critical, like a real hard conversation, but it was coming from a friend that I trusted, I might hear that differently. I might respond differently. But if I don't know you, then might take that as judgment, and I might have an immediate response because I'm also taking into account what I think your perception is of me. And that's going to change how I might play in that conversation. So relationships matter. And trust matters. That's got to be a part of this conversation. So I think the starting point for the sharpening is not only introducing to you that there are triggers that we have, and some may not even know what those triggers are until they do this exercise and they look at, wow, if that may have been said to me before, and this is how I responded. And if they did respond that way, they could at least reflect on what could they do differently. And if they've never seen it before, if it does come up in the future, they'll know how to respond in a better light.
Yeah, what I love is, as Annie mentioned, the three of us have been involved in the process of developing them, but no matter what, every time I view them or discuss them with someone else, I learn something more. So I'm just so excited to sort of lay the groundwork and hopefully get other people excited about this next phase of Journey for Teens, because I really think that there's even more tangible, usable, applicable lessons to be learned throughout it. So Dr. Craig, Dr. Brandt, thank you for really joining us on this first iteration so we can introduce the first two, and hopefully everyone will join us the next 2 weeks as we discuss the subsequent educational sharpenings. So really appreciate the time. Hopefully everyone will go to journeyforteams.org to learn more about the educational sharpenings. The first one is out, self-awareness. You'll have to wait till July to see the reactivity, but we're just excited to have you join us on this. And so we want to thank each of you for tuning in this week. And remember, we want to hear from you. So you can email us at mvlpodcast@avma.org with show notes or ideas, guest suggestions, or maybe if you've had an epiphany or learned something from these, we'd love to hear how people are interacting with these resources that we're developing. You can also leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you listen to. That's a great way for us to help continue to grow the show so that others can find it. With that, take care, and we'll see you next time.